Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Underneath the Hood. I'm Dave Martin, the owner of Martin's Auto Repair in Central Phoenix.
I'm Glen Hayward, the proud owner of Goodworks Auto Repair in sunny Tempe, Arizona.
And I'm Lee Weatherby with Accurate Automotive in the heart of Mesa.
And together, we represent 140 years of combined automotive experience.
Our goal is to change the perception of our auto repair industry by going behind the scenes and underneath the hood.
And we hope to share with you what it's like to own a small business and give you a perspective from an insider's point of view.
So let's get started. Good morning, guys, and welcome to Underneath the Hood podcast with Glenn, Lee, and Dave. How you guys doing?
Well, you put me first and yourself last. That was good ranking order there. Okay.
And, you know,
I'm trying to change and be nicer in my old age, you know.
That's great. I'm probably going to get meaner and nastier.
Glenn, Dave, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
It's nice just to be mentioned.
Hey, you know, yeah, it's just nice to be mentioned. I love that.
We got
That's
an
funny.
honorable
Yeah.
mention.
There we go.
You've been married for a long time, haven't you?
Absolutely.
That's kind of like a kick in the
40
groin,
plus.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And for the honorable mention.
So, guys, guess what we're going to talk about today? We're going to talk about that crazy summer heat, and we're in Arizona. What do we know about that?
You know what? I'll tell you what. That we have some extreme heat out here, and I'll tell you what. It's really a beautiful thing, and I know that sounds like a crazy statement, but
I'd rather
boy,
be hot than cold any day of the week.
Amen.
Amen.
Oh boy!
Yes, amen
But you know
to that
what?
one.
Like you say, the extremeness of the heat that we kind of hear, it's intense, and so that intensity, it really does play havoc on our cars. You know what I
Right.
mean? Beautiful thing is there's a lot of little things that make big differences that we can do to try to, enhance our driving experience, you know what I mean, and getting around during the summer.
Well, all right, guys. So let's start out this podcast by talking about what can the consumer do to keep themselves cool and keep themselves safe. Let's start out there, and then we'll work our way into what they can do with their vehicle.
Well, I would just say this. I mean, if you want to talk about some real basic finesse type things, I mean, think about it. When everybody's using their cars as tools,
Right.
and they're going to the stores and the markets, find a spot when you're going to be parking your car that's shady or a little bit covered or something that's not in necessarily direct sunlight, if it's possible.
Or at least face your car in a direction where the windshield is facing away from the sun.
Yes.
Unless you're going to be there for 4 or 5 hours and the sun's going to come get it anyway. But if you're there for, let's say an hour or so, try to park your car in a direction that the sun isn't shining right into the windshield.
And hey,
Rises in the east and sets in the west.
okay, so we're gonna switch gears just for a second here, and then we're gonna go right back to it.
Don't grind them.
And Glenn, listen, buddy. You know what? You had some great information about the day in history that we did not tell our listeners.
Oh my gosh, how did I pass that one up?
I don't know, Glenn.
How did I let myself get away with
And
that?
you know what? We gave you like a muffin that was sweet with a lot of sugar in it, and you went down.
He
You didn't
buzzed
go up.
out, man. He
You
buzzed out.
Are you buzzing now, or what's
I'm
going on?
buzzing, baby. I'm buzzing. So here's the deal. On this day, May 13th, in 1988, there was a car that I would say 90% of our audience never heard of because I haven't even seen that many of them in my lifetime. The Ford Probe.
Probe.
Oh, yeah.
An often maligned car,
Yeah.
according to this report here. Generally unloved Ford Probe by consumers. I think it just had so many innovations that people were ready. The car actually was a cool looking car.
It was a
cool-looking
nice
car.
looking car.
It looked
Yes,
like
I would agree with you.
A sports car looked like something that could have been on a sports car circuit somewhere.
Little, round track or,
Yeah, no, it was a good looking car.
But it had its challenges,
Yeah.
and eventually it met its demise. As many cars do, they introduce something that is, I can't say freakishly different, but very different from anything that they had produced prior, except for like the GT Cobra or something. Which,
It's almost experimental. It's almost experimental. And what they're doing is you're right. They're changing things and they're trying to make it better. And sometimes it doesn't always, it looks great on paper.
It's interesting when they do what I'm going to call the mesh, where they try to take some of the old and some of the
Yeah,
new and they
yeah.
try to mesh it together.
Yeah.
Well, this was
See if they can
discontinued
create
in
something.
88, so I think they only made the Probe for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
It was
I
a
think you're
very
right, yeah.
short tenure, but
Well, particularly pertaining to our topics, these cars, were known for, getting a little hot. You know what I mean? Especially during the summer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They had that kind of reputation. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. And okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's go back to our regularly scheduled program.
we now return to our regularly scheduled program.
And we were talking about what can consumer do to keep themselves safe, number one,
Yeah.
but also cool in their car. And you guys brought up some really good points. Park in the shade. Put like a curtain across your
Sun shield.
sun shield. There's the word I was
Absolutely.
looking for.
Sun
And
shield.
put it across the windshield. Stuff like that. Make sure you don't leave your
Even
pet.
if it's only 80 degrees, that sun, it's not just the temperature, it's the sun rays coming through and baking your dash. Get a dash mat on your
I was just going to
vehicle.
say a dash mat's
Wow.
really important out here because
Great.
once
If
that
you can't afford a dash mat, bring a bath towel out and throw it onto your dash.
Well,
anything
something-
that can absorb that heat and keep
Yeah.
that plastic and vinyl from getting hot,
and cracking,
And to that end, Glenn,
which
just,
can
I
also
mean,
destroy your radio and other
Absolutely.
controls in your dash.
and to your point exactly, you said something even earlier when you said park away from the sun. You know what I mean? It seems a little bit, like people don't really quite get it. Instead of parking this way where the sun's facing the dash, park the opposite way where the sun is opposite of the dash. It can't affect that big piece of glass. You know what I mean? That magnifier that's,
Well, that's where
intensifying the
you're
heat
sitting.
inside.
I mean, even if it heats up the back, you're sitting in the front. Most of the passengers are either single or two passengers in a vehicle. So if you can keep the heat away from that dashboard and the front windshield.
Well, one of the most
it's a
basic
big-
things of
big
all.
plus.
I mean, and I think we're all pretty conscious of this. We know what it feels like to open the door and get into the car and sit down. If that car's been closed up and it's been out in the sun for any period of time at all, I'm talking 15, 20 minutes, but heaven forbid it's been there all day because you've been in the office, right? Roll those windows down, crack the windows, you guys. I mean, you all know that if we let some of that escape, and then to even go further, when you turn the air on, because I get people, and let's ask this, if it's okay if I ask this question.
Yeah.
We'll ask independent. We didn't have rehearse this. Glenn, do you turn the air off before you get out of the car? Or should you leave it on?
The air conditioner?
Yeah.
It
I get
really doesn't make any difference.
Dave?
I'd leave it on.
See, and I'm going to tell you, I agree. I don't think it makes any difference, but I get asked that question all the
Well,
time.
it's not like the air conditioner keeps running when you shut the key on.
Amen.
I mean,
Right.
so
Amen.
why in the world would you concern
Well, and-
yourself about turning it off?
Right.
Amen.
And to
Amen.
your point about cracking the windows, which is a great idea. And then when you go to get in your car, you turn your air on. You want to make sure your windows down just a little bit.
Leave them down.
Blow the
Yeah.
hot air out of
That's
it.
right.
blow the hot air out of
Exhaust
there.
the cavity, so
Don't
to
put
speak.
it on recirc. They'll put it on vent. That
That's
way
right.
you're pushing the air out because you put it in recirc, it's sucking the hot air in from the outside of your car first.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it'll keep it in there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. One of the things I think that's going to be kind of important is remembering that, these are tips and tricks for when it's, super, super hot outside. But one of the things we experience out here in Arizona is the monsoon. And when we get those, you know what I mean? We got to be careful.
Where you park.
Where you park.
Yep. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Yep.
Kind of like,
Well, you may not be able to find your car anyway. 'Cause this,
Might be under a tree somewhere that fell on your car. You know what I mean?
Well, you mean the one we parked under so we could get the shade?
That is a big deal. I've seen a lot of cars get damaged, trees falling on them. That monsoon can bring 80, 90 mile an hour winds. It's like a tornado, but you can't see the tornado because there's so much dust. You can't see your hand in front of your face.
Right. And that's, the monsoons are like you said, it's the visibility is really bad. And believe me, we'll do another show on monsoons and making sure the visibility is what you should do in that situation. But, we look at another thing that's really important, and this is kind of on a serious side, but it's very important. If you're out driving in the summer and you don't think it's hot out, think twice, because don't leave your pets, kids in the car, because that's just such a dangerous
How
situation.
about soda cans?
And soda cans.
Window
Yeah,
spray.
Yeah.
I-
Stuff blows up. Yeah.
I had a guy pulling a food truck yesterday, and he faced his son toward the south. I mean, his truck towards the south. Here's this can of window spray standing, and it was. I could barely pick it up. It was so hot. I
Wow.
cannot believe it didn't
Oh,
explode.
yeah.
And so,
Be a hell of a mess in a car.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting. 'cause
whatever
like you
can
say,
explode. Soda cans. I mean, oh my gosh! I'd rather have a can of window spray.
anything
explode
that's
in my car than a
that's
soda can.
contained,
or
like
beer or whatever
yeah,
else.
anything's contained. Could be in an aerosol type can or anything else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They will absolutely cook. You know what I mean? It's like an oven in there.
It's okay if it's inside of a cooler because at least it's insulated.
Right.
It'll be
Right.
just-
It's not
Well,
all over your car.
And now the one thing I will tell you is
It won't blow up.
And I've done
More
this now
likely.
probably for the past, I don't know, probably the past 16, 18 years, I guess. It was my wife's idea and I just kind of adopted it. I always go
You're
down.
smart if you adopt most of your wife's ideas.
Amen. That doesn't make me smart, but I can tell you this: every now and then, I know how to listen. Every now and then,
Yeah.
she says, "Babe, I'm always out doing things,
Is that
before
your
work."
nickname?
Babe. Yeah. I'm always out doing things.
Wasn't there like a donkey
before...
or something named Dave? And so, okay.
Easy. I think it was. If the truth be known, I think it was a pig.
I think you're right.
Which
Right,
what,
it
I
was
can
a-
resemble that.
yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No, but
I think we
it
all
turned out.
resemble that a little bit.
It turns out where she says, you know what, you should carry some waters in your car, not in the trunk or anything else, but like put them in the cavity, because here's the thing. I can tell you this: the last at least 3 or 4 years in a row, you always see somebody that's broke down on the side of the freeway or something. You know what I mean? And when it's hot, you guys, we're talking May, right? June, July. Oh my gosh! These temperatures are staggering, and you get stuck and you don't have any water. What's the only thing you want? You want water. Because you know what, you can literally make it through, even standing out in the heat, just it sucks the life right out of you. You got to get a little bit of water. And so you know what,
dehydration is
I
terrible.
always
I'm guilty of that.
And
Not drinking
keep
enough
extra water.
And this is another thing that people don't realize too is I don't do it, and I know you guys don't do it either, but the vaping thing, they put these vape cartridges in their car, and we've seen that even at my shop where
They blow up?
they get so hot they pop, and it's
Dave,
like,
that was a different time in my life, a different part of my
yeah,
life.
yeah, I know that wasn't vaping. That wasn't vape. They called it something else back then.
They called it something else. That's right. That's
And
right.
another thing, guys, too, is we're kind of talking about the consumer and what they see, not under the hood stuff, but what they see is let's say you get a little rock chip in your windshield. You know what? You got to get that thing sealed really fast, because if you don't, in that hot day, boy, that thing's going to spread like wildfire.
And I'm going to tell you what, I love, you're 1000% correct. I agree wholeheartedly, but it's so fascinating when you go to the car wash and the guy comes up, hey,
Yeah.
you got some window things, and people are going, oh man, and it's only going to be $30, but most of the time,
Yeah.
your insurance company will cover that.
You're right.
You know what I mean? It's just, these guys do it in such a, I don't know the nice way to say it, in such a sleazy manner, you know what I mean? But really is the benefit far outweighs that inconvenience, or what I'm going to say, they're trying to make it convenient, you know what I mean, for us to do
Sure.
right there. It just, it feels like they're prying, you know what I mean?
Right, and-
Sometimes,
Yeah,
you know what I
right,
mean?
right.
Some are very
But
good at
it'd
it,
be
some
almost as
aren't.
bad if we saw someone with their tires deflated and we don't say anything. you
Yeah,
know.
well, that's
And
true.
but it's
Come
good.
over to my shop. I'll fill it up for free. I mean,
And you know what? They're striking a nerve in one way, in convenience. And
Yeah.
convenience for everybody in today's world is so important.
I think it's
because
essential.
everybody's
I think it's essential.
Well, look at the grocery store now.
Yeah.
People call. They go online. They order their food. They pull up in the parking lot and they bring it out to them. We're in
Some
such a-
people sit at home, order it, and then they have it delivered to them.
Yeah, I know.
that too.
Now there's another level, but we haven't. My wife hasn't done that yet. I mean, she has done the curbside thing, which is great. I mean, it does save time and it makes things a little easier. And if you got a busy life and you got a big family, it's an amazing thing. You know what I mean?
Sucks though. if
You
they
guys,
put a
it takes
bunch
away
of
my
bru-
steps, man. No, I want my grocery steps.
Yeah, you got to have your grocery
Yeah.
steps too.
What
That's
if they
another
put a
thing.
bunch of bruised apples in there or rotten tomatoes?
You know what? You just trust in somebody to do the right thing and give you the right food. Yeah, I don't know. I don't do that. That is way above my pay grade. I don't
Apparently,
know.
that's an indication of a piece of fruit they would eat.
Yeah. Obviously, that's it. Well, and then so guys, we kind of talked about inside the car. What the consumer should do to keep themselves safe and
Yeah.
cool, right?
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about what's going on under the hood of the car and what should they do to make sure that their car is ready for summer. Because you all know how important and how catastrophic things can get when that car is not ready for summer.
Now, I'm going to tell you something, and it sounds like the craziest thing, but I've done it since I was, I think I've done it since I was probably 12 or 13. But my grandpa, and
You
I'll
can
never
remember
forget,
back that far?
Was that 1800s?
Yeah.
Was there cars back then?
Keep it going, fellas.
Yeah, the
Next
Model
time- next
T
time-
had
next-
just, the
next
Model
time
T
I'll
had
grow
just
my
rolled
beard
off
back.
the assembly line.
No, the interesting thing is, my grandpa always said, my uncle, whenever it's dirty, you know what I mean? You get all the dust. We get a ton of dust and road debris and everything else underneath the hood. Hose it down. Guess what? hose down your AC condenser, hose down your radiator, knock out all that dirt and dust and stuff that you normally collect when you're just driving. And you know what? It pays huge dividends because you know what? The temperatures of the car run 8 to 12, sometimes 15 degrees cooler just by a little spray down here and there. Yep. And I'm not maybe once, twice a year, but particularly during the summer, get all that extra. I mean, how is it when you have like a backpack on your back and you're walking? It doesn't feel real great, right? Remove that. Gives a little bit, little bit easier.
Let's talk about just quickly about how radiators have changed. I mean, the radiators used to run vertically. Now they run horizontally. This has been, 30, 40 years that everyone's made the transition, but you don't find a radiator hardly at all anymore that runs, vertically. They're all horizontal. So part of that has to do with the way the water flows through the radiator, and the sediment can build up in a horizontal radiator more so than in a vertical one, because the vertical one had a big tank on the bottom and it just kept circulating through. Now your tanks are on the side. That debris that gets picked up from the coolant going through your engine block, your cylinder heads, the hoses, the water pump, all the stuff, and picks up all those particulates. And then when the car shuts off, they kind of take a rest horizontally like we do. Yeah. But then, they can start to build up towards the bottom of the radiator because there's no tank down there anymore. The tank is on the sides of the radiator. Yeah. So without having your coolant service done periodically with your vehicle, I would say every probably 2-3 years, especially in a hot environment like this, have your system flushed out to get all of that debris and get it out of the system completely.
Oh, and I agree wholeheartedly. You know what? There's nothing, I would say that's probably one of the more vital things you can do, as well as one of the top maintenance items that you could do to preserve and lengthen the life of your vehicle.
Right. And
getting all that cruddy sediment and stuff you're talking about.
Well, I think water pumps prematurely fail because
there's no question about it.
There's so much crap, and then all you got is this little tiny rubber seal that keeps that water, that coolant inside of your system. Yeah. But as that turns chemically into something else, as other things are mixed in with it, your antifreeze is a good preventative. You got to have that. Right. Without that, you'd probably put a water pump on every 6 months on your vehicle. But at the end of the day, when that coolant eventually breaks down due to contamination of different kinds of metals and rubber and everything that this thing flows through, you're going to have a problem if you don't get that flushed.
So I want to say something, because you brought up a really good point there.
I usually do.
Well, once in a while. I mean,
every so often.
Hey, Glenn, slow down the length of that arm.
Yeah. Slow your roll, man.
Roll that back. It's unproportionate.
You're coming in pretty hot here, Glenn. So you brought up the radiator thing, and you brought up how they've changed, how they went from vertical to horizontal.
And now they're aluminum.
Well, they used to be metal.
Plastic and
aluminum. Well, and that
copper, aluminum.
You guys nailed exactly where I was going with this thing. The ends, the tanks, they're plastic.
Right.
And what happens to plastic? We've all had kids, right? And our kids have left their toys outside
I got
over the
rid
summer.
of all my kids.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get rid of mine. No, mine's fine. But my point being is that you watch what happens to plastic over the summer when you just see it in your kids' toys. They just it turns white,
distorts,
and it just turns white and it gets brittle, right?
It does.
So what we try whenever we do an oil change in the car and we do an inspection, that's one of the things we look at. We look at the radiator tanks, and if they're turning really white and they're looking like they're getting really brittle, because you guys all know this. You're driving down the freeway at 65 miles an hour, and that tank cracks, you can't pull over fast enough in a safe place before you did engine damage.
But you do know that the story you're going to hear is right.
Yeah.
I only had a mile to go.
Yeah, I only had a mile to go. Yeah, and everybody tries to make
I country mile.
Yeah. And I think it's ingrained.
Which mile was that? The 19 and a half, or really the 5,279 feet?
Well, and not
which mile?
Not only that, guys, nobody wants to be stuck on the side of the freeway, because it used to be, when I was growing up, it used to be like if you saw somebody on the side of the road, you'd get in the middle lane or the next lane over and you go around them. Now it's like chicken, man. They just want to get as close to you as they can. It's like, oh my God, it's crazy. And one other thing, we had a question from one of our listeners.
I love it.
Yeah.
We have listeners?
I know. I was thinking the same thing, but I was pretty shocked. But you know what? I got over that.
Well, there's three of us in the room here, so we do have at least two listeners.
Well, and our producer's listening to us, and shaking her head most of the time, going, "You guys, oh my God." Anyway, the listener asked, "Do you have to wait to spray down your engine? Does it need to be cool, or does it not matter?"
Okay, so now I'm gonna if it's okay, I'm gonna tackle that real quick. It's a tricky question, and I'll tell you why. If the car has been hot or overheated or something like that, you definitely do not want to spray it down while it's hot. You want to allow it to cool. You don't want to add any coolant or water or anything else to it when it's in its hot state. Now, if it's working at normal operating temperature, and what you want to do, if that question is pertaining to the cleaning aspect, as I was talking about,
the cleaning,
then if it's talking about that, then what I would tell you is, no, you don't have to wait for it to cool down. You can, you can actually spray it down. You're not going to sit there and run the hose on it. You know what I mean? You risk doing some damage, but you can spray things down. Use one of the pressure nozzles and spray things. Get some of the dust and dirt. You know what I mean? If you have an air blower, you know what I mean, then you can blow. Like I say, you talked about the radiators, how they're, instead of horizontal, they're laying vertical, but almost all still the AC condensers are still that flat face thing up in the front, you know what I mean, behind the bumpers, and they're collecting bugs and dust and debris and dirt and everything else that's getting thrown up in there. So it's good to spray that stuff down and then blow it out a little bit, you know what I mean? And really all it does is it allows, but do you have to wait for the engine to cool down? I don't believe so. No. I don't.
Airflow is the most. That's why we want to.
Well, and one of the things I want to be clear about here too, because I want to make sure this listener understands that the thing of it is when you're spraying down that engine, if you're spraying down the engine, now I understand what you guys are saying. The thing of it is we're talking about the radiator and we're talking about the condenser. Usually there's nothing in that area that's going to give you too much trouble.
Correct.
Right. But when you start spraying down in certain cars, you want to definitely consult with the shop that you do business with and ask them before you do any of that stuff, because there's connectors.
Let them do it.
Right, let them do it. Yeah, because there's connectors, and we just talked about how brittle plastic is.
You
What
bet.
are these connectors made out of? Plastic. So what happens is these connectors start to crack, water gets down in there, and pretty soon you end up with a running problem, the check engine light. We don't want that. So we want to make sure that if you're going to do something like that, make sure that you consult with somebody, your shop, or let them do that, like Lee said. At least that's the better way to do it.
You bet.
Don't just go out there with a hose and start dousing things down under the hood. That's not a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and here again, in most cases they can get away with spraying stuff down,
Right.
getting the dirt off, and I'm
Right.
talking
Right.
predominantly around the fender wells and stuff, because most of motors now in modern cars, they'll have the plastics that are covering everything. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
and,
they got
and
the skirt.
and really what you're wanting to do is kind of lightly knock the dust and dirts and stuff like that.
Right.
The surface things. You're not trying to get down
keep
and
the
clean
cowl
the
by your
motor.
windshield clean. You know that little thing looks like a sewer register there. You keep that because that gets accumulated with leaves.
Yes.
Call that a
and
sewer
pine
register?
You're talking about the
Is that what
cowl.
Yeah, they call it a cowl.
The
Not
cowl.
Simon Cowell,
Yeah.
the other cowl.
Yeah.
This would
Yeah.
be the cowl on by your windshield. And that pulls the air in, and when that gets plugged up, your air circulation go down, and all those particulates are going to end up in your cabin air filter if you have one.
Yeah.
Well, and guys, we're talking about summer, getting ready for summer. We're talking about making sure that you're ready for the hot weather. And we talked about the cooling system. Cooling system is vital.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then also, making sure lubrication, guys.
Absolutely. Make sure your oil's full. Make sure that you got good coolant, going in there. Glenn talked about the air filters and the cabin filters. Those are vital, you guys, especially during that time.
Right.
Listen, during the summer months, okay, the cars are taxed from an intensity standpoint 25 to 28% more than they are during the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And simply because we're driving around with the largest load that you can put on a vehicle. And that's just simply pushing the button, turn the AC compressor on. Because that doesn't just turn the AC compressor on. Let's think about that. You're loading up, the fans automatically come on. In almost every vehicle out there and every manufacturer, the cooling fans come on. Why? Because the intense load that's being put on the engine, you know what I mean? The idle does what? Raises. Even in fuel-injected cars, you have compensator that allows for the idle to remain stable. Okay. And so you're turning on a plethora of systems, you know what I mean, just by pushing that button, which I would suggest push the button. That's what they're there for. But at the same token, we have to remember that we are putting excess load on the vehicle. And that's why it's so important to keep the things clean, like you're talking about. Cooling system plays a huge role. Even though coolant isn't the air conditioning, it does play a major factor in how cold your air will get.
Right. And then I was talking about fluids. Fluids, what causes heat? Friction.
Yep.
Friction
and dirt
causes,
and dirt.
and dirt. So what happens though is when you got friction, you're doing wear
Yep.
and you're doing damage
Yep.
to metal components.
Absolutely.
And that's so important that you make sure you have clean oil in your car, make sure you have good oil in your car, transmission fluid is clean, it's full. differential, because those three right there are probably the most expensive things that you're going to replace: your engine, your transmission, and your differential.
Absolutely. And I would even go one further and say, you know what, make sure, and I mean, I know that we really haven't discussed this, maybe we can discuss on a future podcast, but on your air conditioning systems, because we rely on them so heavily out here in Arizona, what do you guys, let me throw this out, what do you guys think about AC evac and recharge as a service on a yearly?
I would say that would apply to a lot of vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in newer vehicles, maybe in the first 5 years, that's probably not necessary. But I would say after that, that might be something you want to look at. I mean, really, you look at the air conditioning in your house. What do they advertise? Get your AC ready.
tune-up.
AC tune-up, yeah. And you know, rejuvenation, whatever. You know, they come up with different words, but the point is they want to come out before summer hits, and they want to make sure the condenser's clean.
You
Just
bet.
had mine done last week.
You bet.
Had the guys out to service it.
And you guys, and the reason why I say that is because I just look, and I think we're not atypical. I mean, we're just the same as you guys. When it comes to air conditioning, what's the number one leak that we generally find in those AC systems? It's those silly Schrader valves.
Yeah.
And you know what? If we're doing evac and charges,
Schrader valve, for those who don't know what one is, it's like a bicycle tire valve that's on the high side and the low side. They look a little different, but
some
they
are
do the
ball
same thing.
valves. They're all Schrader valves. But
It's where they put the Freon in.
That's correct.
That's where that's the ports where you hook up the machine to actually evacuate and recharge the system.
you guys are good. Thanks for your clarity. I wasn't even. I mean, that's good.
Well,
that you
we
clarified
use
that.
a lot of terms that may be unfamiliar.
Oh yeah.
Schrader, who is he?
Yeah, but is that where you guys see a lot of the leaks?
Yeah.
and
He's the guy who
so
plays the piano in Peanuts, right?
and so
Schrader valves, and you're right. Schrader valves used to be what you
The
said
bicycle
earlier,
stem.
bicycle valve stem. It used to be almost identical to that. Now it's like a housing,
Right.
And literally, we find this at my shop, and I'm sure I don't know if you guys do it too, and you can tell me, but a lot of times when we go to evacuate and recharge the system, we pull the machine off, and all of a sudden the valve starts leaking.
you bet.
Mm-hmm.
You bet.
You got to change those valves dang near every time you service them, because otherwise they will leak. And
That's
you're right.
true.
It's such
Never
a small,
fails.
it's such a small thing
Yeah.
that can cause you such a big problem. So it's wise just to change them, and that's what I tell the guys now.
Yeah, and weird enough, Ford and Jim for a long time used the high side Schrader port had a rubber valve in it. As
Yes.
soon as you put your machine on the thing,
It distorted the rubber.
It perforates the rubber. Then you
There
take the thing off, and the thing's spraying, refrigerant all over. It's like, what a stupid idea.
Well, the interesting thing, and the only reason I said
It was
that is
cheap.
because here's the thing:
It was cheap, for sure.
if we can keep, I mean, nowadays we all have the systems where we can recover the Freon that's still available, and that
Absolutely.
belongs to the customer.
Right,
They don't have to
absolutely,
buy
yep.
new stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, AC evac and recharge as a service is so much less expensive. You know what I mean? Than letting the system go flat and then all of a sudden come in, got to find a leak. What do we have to do? Evac and charge it, put in some dye, and then let for it do what? Oh yeah, go flat again. You guys, those days are outdated.
I want to
We
mention,
should-
along with the AC compressor coming on, when it gets low, it does what we call short cycling. So it turns on, turns off, turns on, turns off. That's extra wear and tear on that.
Absolutely.
Not only that, but your fans, they're turning on, they're turning off. Every time the compressor comes on, the fans by your radiator and condenser have to come on.
Right,
So
excessive
you're
loads.
just you're
You know, and I'll say one more.
better they run constantly than being on off on off.
No
on,
question.
off.
And
No
I'll
question.
say one more thing, and then we're going to wrap this show up here. But is when your Freon is low in your system, Freon actually helps carry the oil through the system. And what did we talk about earlier? Friction.
Yeah.
We talked about you're doing damage to your compressor when it's not getting properly oiled.
That's correct.
Because there's a moving component in there. So you want to make sure that system does stay full, so it can obviously lubricate the moving parts in your AC system. So
You bet.
good stuff, guys. It was a great show. I love doing these podcasts with you guys, and I'm looking forward to doing another one very, very soon. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and try to stay out of the heat, man. Don't burn yourself.
Gonna do it.
We'll see you next episode.
Thank you.
Goodbye.